Hi, I'm Coach Val, and welcome to Running on Carbs Podcast. This is episode 8 of the podcast, and I'm so happy that you are here. I am going to be sharing a personal journey with you today, and hopefully you can get some information out of my journey to help you if you have experienced something similar, or if, by chance someday in the future you experience something of similar nature. You might have seen in the title of our podcast today, the title is "A Setback is a Setup for a Comeback." And I truly believe that. And I do believe that my own personal journey of injury and coming back from injury has allowed me to live this and truly embody the idea of setbacks and not being kept down from them, but truly coming back stronger than ever. So I think first I need to give a short disclaimer to this episode, and that I am not a medical professional. I am an individual uh, recreational runner. Although I do have training as a run coach and personal trainer, I am not a medical professional. So anything in this episode is truly from a personal nature and from my own experience. So it's an N of one, just me. And it's just for information, entertainment purposes only, so to speak. If you do have a medical concern or you have a potential injury yourself, then please seek the advice of a medical professional. Don't rely on this podcast or any other podcast or Dr. Google for your analysis and care. So please seek an actual qualified medical professional if you need it. All right, so with that out of the way, I do want to share that the May drawing is still open. So you can enter to win an 8-week customized training plan that I will write personally for you. Um, all you need to do is leave a 5-star review for the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Take a screenshot of the episode and send it to me through Instagram. Just tag me on Instagram at running.on.carbs, or send me a DM with it. Preferably take a screenshot and just tag me. That's easiest. And I'm going to pick one review that is sent in May to win an 8-week customized program that I will announce on the first episode in June. So you have a couple more weeks still to get into that drawing. And please do that, because any reviews that you write help the podcast grow and reach a larger audience. So I really appreciate that. If you're getting value from it, then any reviews that you leave would be very appreciated. Thank you. Also want to give a quick reminder that the Bashful Badass Virtual Run Club is still open. So the wait list is open. I have not announced the actual date for the program just yet, but you can get on the wait list now. And anything that I announce as far as dates and prices, etc., you will be the first to get. And you want to be the first because this is going to be a very limited program, only limited to 6 ladies who will be a part of the beta group. So we are launching this together as a small group. And all of the details about the program can be found again on Instagram, but get on the wait list. I'll put a link in the show notes to the wait list, and lock in your founding member price, because anyone who is part of this first group, whatever price you pay for that first group, which will be heavily discounted, only because it is the first program and I want to build it with you, you can take advantage of that and lock in your price. And as long as you want to stay in the program, that will be your price. And it will definitely be lower than everybody else as the program grows, and we have more renditions of it. So with that said, on to the episode topic. So running is a high impact sport. Do I need to say that? Probably not. It's that is the nature of running. It's, jumping from one foot to the other in succession over a period of time and distance. So running is a high impact sport, and with any high impact sport, there is going to be injuries. Some will be more than others, or more serious than others. But anytime that you're really pushing your body to any type of limit or to your limit, there's a potential for injury. Um, 50% of runners, so according to statistics that I found in researching for this episode today, I found that 50% of runners get injured every year. And that actually is considered to be a very conservative estimate. It's probably closer to the 75% range every year. And that can be a range of injuries, but the reason why they say that that's probably low at the 50% mark is that a lot of injuries aren't reported. So you might twist an ankle and not necessarily go to the doctor or something. There might be more, serious things, but still, if you don't go to the doctor and don't report it, it can't be a part of a statistic. So 75% is really closer to what they believe it is. It isn't the highest high impact sport injury number. They said that rugby, football, hockey, those are all higher in injury report or reported injury rates. Um, but again, anytime you're pushing your body, there's going to be a possibility of injury. So the most common running injuries are runner's knee, IT band syndrome, shin splints, plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis, and then stress fractures. Um, I'm not going to go into all of those injuries, but there's lots of information on each one. But just as a list, those are the most common injuries that we hear about as runners. Um, and a lot of them come from just running too much, too often, too fast, or with insufficient recovery in between your runs. So there's a lot of reasons for these injuries. Other times, injuries can happen because you ignored what we runners like to refer to as niggles. So you've got something that's just kind of bothering you. It's not terribly painful. It might not keep you from running, but it's there and it bothers you. And so you ignore it because it's like, oh, I can run through it. So I might as well just keep going. Well, those can really compound over time or maybe cause you to change your gait. And now you're putting load when you're changing your gait, you're putting load in an area of the body that maybe can't sustain it or wasn't meant for that amount of load. And when that happens, now you're leading up to an injury rather than just a niggle. So those are things to be aware of. Um, the definition of overuse. So, with a lot of these injuries, they're considered overuse injuries. That's the running too much, too often, etc. Um, so, here's a written definition. I'm going to read it. Mechanism of gradual onset with an underlying pathogenesis of repetitive microtrauma. So, repetitive or mechanism of gradual onset, so it's going to come on over time. Um, Underlying pathogenesis of repetitive microtrauma. So that means that you are slowly over time, every time you do something, causing small amounts of trauma every single time you do it. And trauma, you hear the word trauma if you're not in the medical area or something, you think trauma, that's, serious. Well, trauma is simply damage to the body. So your whatever area of the body that is prone to that injury is receiving too much load, too much impact, whatever it is, and it's injuring it over time. This was interesting though, the cause. So this is a little different. The cause of an overuse injury is often less obvious compared to like a single traumatic event, like a fall or a collision or something. So that's a traumatic acute event. You know what caused the problem in that case. So let's say the fracture. So you get a fracture because you fell. Well, the cause of the fracture is the fall. When you have a stress fracture, for example, when you're running, that cause can be a lot more esoteric, I guess is a good word for it, you might not realize or know exactly what caused that stress fracture. Why was it caused in that area? You can say overuse because you were running and you were maybe increasing mileage. Okay, that's overuse, but why did that bone fail? What was it that caused that specific injury and why did that specific bone fail at that time? That's a little less, a little harder to understand and really narrow down. So the cause is a little harder to nail down. Definition of overuse injury. So the source of this is the National Library of Medicine, Journal of Athletic Training, and I'll put the link in the show notes if you want to read the whole article. But I pulled this out of the journal article, and it says the definition of overuse injury: during activity, tissue such as muscles, tendons, bones, and ligaments are loaded. Okay. Over time and during repetitive activities, these tissues are continuously loaded. If they do not sufficiently recover between the bouts of activities, then one or more of those tissues can fail, causing injury, thereby considered an overuse injury. So if you've ever wondered what the heck is an overuse injury, because it's very broad and again, just kind of it's not real specific. Then there you go. So this describes what an overuse injury is, but again, it doesn't talk about the specific cause of the overuse injury. Was it poor running form? Was it an altered gait, etc.? What was the cause? And why did that particular bone decide to fail at that moment in time, versus another time, or maybe not? Because I tell you, you can put two runners right next to each other with the same training plan, and one might get injured and the other won't. You have to really, there's a lot of variations and variabilities that go into what causes an runner to get injured versus not. So with that said, and now you kind of understand about, different running injuries and things, I really wanted to share my own journey and injury journey that I've had because it's rather unique, as I'll share, and not real common. And when I first got injured, I couldn't find a lot of information. So back in July of 2023, I was training for the Long Beach Marathon. It was to be my second marathon. And I was about 5 weeks into training for that marathon. So very early on, it was an 18-week program. So I was many weeks out still. I had only just started. And I was coming off of a PR for a half marathon. So I was very strong. I had a lot of high mileage under my belt because of my training for that half marathon that I had done the month prior. And I felt really good. Um, and I went back to my last training plan for the marathon. I had not increased the number of days. I hadn't done much of anything different. I just went back to the previous marathon training plan that had got me through my first marathon. And I was following that. The difference was I did have a little bit higher long run miles at that point in the training plan, but that was simply because I had recently been running that high mileage, so I did not cut that back dramatically. So my last run was July 16th, 2023. I had gone out to do 14 miles. I was going to run around a lake that is nearby. And I guess I have to back up just a smidge, actually, because earlier in that same week, so that would have been a Sunday run. But earlier in that week, I had done 3 runs. And 2 of the runs felt okay. And there was I had a little bit of stiffness in my hip flexor. And I thought, okay, I got to go home and foam roll this because it's, my hip flexors feel a little tight, a little stiff. So, got to go take care of that. So I did. I would go home and foam roll and, do all my self-care. And then that midweek run, I would do my run, which I think in that case, don't quote me on it, but I think none of my runs that week were more than 6 miles, but I think this one was a 4 mile run. And then I was going to do 8 strides after my 4 mile run. So that's strides are, a little faster running at the end of my easy pace 4 mile run. And when I got to my 4 mile run was fine. When I got to my strides, I started running them and realized that my hip flexor was really tight and very uncomfortable. And I think I got through 4 of those strides, and it was throwing my gait off. I can feel my foot strike was wrong. It was off, and I stopped and said to myself, "Nope, not going to do that. I don't want to get injured. I don't, I want to train. So I'm going to give it a rest. I'm not going to finish these strides. I'm going to just rest." So I did. And I actually took an extra day off that week, thinking that that might help give my body a little more rest. So I took a week off, or took a couple days off, and I pushed my long run from my normal Saturday to Sunday. Um, Went out on Sunday to do that 5 miles, or sorry, to do that 14 miles around the 5 mile loop at the lake, and it was ugly. It was so ugly, just to break it down and be honest. I kept stopping, stretching my hip flexor, twisting, just trying to make it feel better, but it kept tightening up and cramping up, and it felt really bad. So I made it one loop. I made it 5 miles, and that was purely because I had to get back to my car. Otherwise, I probably would have cut it shorter. Um, but I drove home, and by the time I got home and out of my car, I could barely walk. Just it was so tight and so painful. Every footstep really hurt, and I had 2 days of holding on to furniture and the walls in order to just get to where I needed to go. I could barely put any pressure on my right leg. It was very painful. But it wasn't to the point of pain, like go to the emergency room pain, um, but it was not good. And I happened to have a doctor's appointment with a pain specialist that following Tuesday, so that was Sunday. So I was just trying to get to that doctor's appointment for Tuesday, and, that was for another thing that I had been dealing with, in my low back. So, and I had already gone to physical therapy and done all that stuff. So anyway, I had that appointment set up. So when I went to her on Tuesday, I was able to walk. Like, it was so strange. All of a sudden, I was here at my standing desk, like I am right now, and I kept going from sitting to standing, throughout the day. That's what I've been doing for my back anyway. So anyway, I was standing at my standing desk, and I just turned to go out the door, and all of a sudden I took a couple steps and I was able to walk. It was so random. So I thought, "Oh, I'm on the mend, I'm getting better." So I was excited. Um, Went to the doctor on Tuesday, still limping, still not 100% by any means. And she did some tests, and she ended up ordering an MRI for my low back and an X-ray for my hips because I was complaining about the hip flexor problem. She had me do a hop test, which is where you hop on one foot, and I could easily hop on my left. As soon as I went to hop on my right, I fell over. So she's like, "Okay, we don't need to do that anymore." But she did not go any further than an X-ray for my hip. And this is not uncommon in the US medical system. I don't know if it's any different in other countries, but here that's pretty common. They start with an X-ray. Unfortunately, stress fractures don't often show up on an X-ray, at least not in the beginning. Mine never showed up on an X-ray. I had several X-rays throughout this time, and it never showed up. So anyway, I'm going to fast forward some of this story. Eventually, I got an MRI with dye, arthrogram. I think I got that right. Anyway, with dye, so they could see the tissues surrounding to see if maybe there was a labral tear or something like that. And that MRI showed the stress fracture. So my stress fracture was located in the femoral neck, on the compression side, which is like the inside of the femoral neck. And that femoral neck is in your hip. And so you have the ball of your hip, and then right underneath that is the neck, and then that goes straight down into your femur, which is like your upper thigh bone. So if you're not very familiar with anatomy, maybe that helps give a little visual. So it was in that little crook of the neck of that bone, and it was on the inside, what's called a compression side fracture. And I swear, as soon as they found that out, I got the results on Friday, and the doctor called me on Sunday in like a massive panic. You need to go to the ER. You have to go there right now. You have a stress fracture. I'm like, I got the results on Friday. My husband already pulled the crutches out of the garage from, I think my father in law had them one time when he broke his hip. Um, and so I'm already on crutches. I've already looked it up on the internet, and I realized that I got to stay off of it. So I'm staying off it. She said, you have to go to the ER tonight on Sunday night at like 5 o'clock. I'm like, you know what? I've been walking around on this for 9 weeks. I've been exercising because, like I said, I had to fast forward this story. It was a long story. So anyway, I said, I will go on Monday morning to the ER, and I will be prepared with food and snacks because I know when you go to the ER, you're going to be there for hours, which I was. I was there for 7 hours. So, and they wanted to do surgery, but I had already researched this injury, and I felt confident that based on the location of the fracture, I wanted a more conservative treatment. So I wanted to stay on crutches and see how the stress fracture healed by simply staying off of it, because I had not tried that. Up until then, I had not been running, but I had been walking on it. I'd been going to this neuro integrated stretching that actually made me feel a lot better, but it didn't fix it. And I've been doing yoga. I was doing all sorts of stuff before I knew that I had a stress fracture. And I'd been doing that for over 2 months. So I said, I think it can wait a night and before I go to the ER and sit there all night long. So anyway, when I did go to the ER, it was a surgeon, it was an orthopedic surgeon. And so of course surgeons want to do surgery. And he wanted to do surgery, and I said, "Nah, I don't think I need surgery. I would really like to go a conservative route." So eventually, he came back and said, "Okay, go to the orthopedic doctor next week, and in the meantime, completely non-weight bearing, stay on your crutches." Okay, so that's what I did, and the doctor, when I saw him the following week, confirmed that based on where my fracture was located on the compression side, that I could take a more conservative route of staying on crutches, rather than going straight to surgery, because surgery is questionable. Now, the my understanding, and again, remember, I'm not a medical professional, but in my research and also in talking with the doctor, had my stress fracture had been a tension side, which would be the outside of the hip bone, I would probably have had a different outcome. I might not have been able to avoid surgery had it have been in a different location. So the location of a stress fracture in the hip region is really important to know and to discuss with your doctor. But I also like to encourage people to be their own health advocate, because if I would have listened to that first doctor in the ER, who was a surgeon who just likes to do surgery, I would have had surgery instead of going a conservative route. And I don't know how that surgery would have gone. There's always a risk when you have surgery. So you really need to weigh your pros and cons, maybe get a second opinion before you jump to that, if you are able to, if it's not acute. And in my case, I had the ability and privilege that I could wait, and I could weigh my consequences, pros and cons. So I did not have to jump straight to surgery. It was not life or death at the moment. So thankfully, I was able to do that. I was on crutches for 6 weeks, non-weight bearing, which means 100% never off those crutches. I made meals on crutches. I had to shower, by not putting any pressure on that foot. So I had to sit in the shower, and I got real creative. Going from room to room. I remember my husband, coming into the room one day, and I was going from my office, to the kitchen and stuff, and I had a backpack on, and I had my computer in the backpack, and, start crutching it out of the office, and he said, "Where are you going?" By the way, I couldn't drive either. So, I've got this backpack on, and he's like, "Where are you going?" And he said, "To the kitchen." So, oh, okay. So, it's, it's quite a different life. It's a real challenge when you're on crutches, and I'm just very grateful that I did not have to take care of small children. I really just had to take care of myself while I was on crutches, and I'm pretty grateful for that because, I feel for people who are on crutches, non-weight bearing, and, they've got small children to take care of. It's not like you've had a lifetime to really get used to how do you do this and navigate. It's all of a sudden just boom, you can't use your leg. So, but you still need to function in the world. So it was really a challenge, but I did manage. Um, these stress fractures, though. So what I wanted to share about the stress fracture risk rate, it was really unusual for this stress fracture to occur. When I was researching this podcast today, um, I learned that these particular types of stress fractures in the femoral neck only account for 3% of sports related injuries. Um, or sorry, sports related fractures. So only 3% of sports related fractures are femoral neck stress fractures. And so, that I couldn't find any information or very little information out on the internet and, different places that I was looking on this particular injury is not really surprising based on that. It's not very common. Um, but it is most commonly seen. So, this particular stress fracture in the femoral neck is most commonly seen in military recruits and long distance runners. So those are the two categories of people that really see this most highly, or this particular injury most often. And the highest incidents are in female runners. When it comes to those running long distances. So, female runners, this is something to be aware of. So, if you find that you're having hip tightness, hip pain, it's in the front, so in the hip flexor area, well, at least that's where I felt the compression side fracture. I don't know where you'd feel a tension side. Um, but if you're having that kind of pain, be aware because female long distance runners, that you have a higher incidence of this particular injury. And the biggest risk, which is, I feel very grateful, but the biggest risk is um, a delay in diagnosis. So, a delay in diagnosis, number one, the biggest risk part of that is that the fracture could get worse and it can what's called displace. If a fracture displaces, that means the bone separated. Likely not going to avoid surgery in that particular case. So, if the bone actually separates and you're not just left with a small fracture that can be remodeled by the osteoblasts and osteoclasts in your bone, um, but if it's actually fully displaced, you're probably looking at surgery, I think, there. Um, and if it displaces, then that leads to other potential problems, one of which can be it's called avascular necrosis. And that is when the femoral head, so the ball of the hip joint, when that loses blood supply. So when that loses blood supply, that is a serious, serious life threatening injury. and it could necessitate a total hip replacement. Even in a young person, that could happen. So, early detection of a stress fracture and management of the injury is absolutely key to returning to sport and to avoiding that secondary, very high risk um, injury of the avascular necrosis. Thankfully, I did not have anything like that. My stress fracture just remained a fracture line. As a matter of fact, it was, like I said, it never even showed up on x-rays. So the only reason I knew about it was because of the MRI. The MRI, I had a couple of them actually. I was supposed to be cleared for the stress fracture in December. I had a follow-up MRI on December 26th, the day after Christmas. I was super excited because I thought, this is it. I'm being cleared in, a week after they read my MRI result. I am back to running. I'm so excited. I had a half marathon lined up for May, and I thought I could walk that half marathon. I can be strong enough to do that. And I was very excited. Did the MRI, which, by the way, an MRI the day after Christmas, I don't know what I was thinking. I thought I'd have the results back within a week. Well, apparently everybody goes on vacation, even MRI, or even radiologists. So I did not actually get my results until after the first of the year sometime. And when they finally did get the results back to me, I cried because I had another setback. I had new findings in my MRI results. It showed that the stress fracture had started healing, so it was doing well. They didn't say it was actually healed, but they said that they could see where it had been, and that it was. I can't remember the words that they had in the MRI, but anyway, it was doing fine. We'll put it that way. But I had new edema, and it was moderate edema in the femoral head. That's where I was talking about earlier. That's where avascular necrosis can show up, is in the femoral head. And now I had new edema, which is swelling in the bone, in the head of the femur, which I had no findings, no swelling, nothing in that area previously. Um, Still not clear what that was caused from. Talked to my doctor a couple of times on that to see what his thoughts were on it. Um, and we never really had much of an idea of what caused that. So, but the result was that I did not have to go back on crutches. Thank goodness, because that's why I cried, because I went to Dr. Google and it said when you have swelling in that area, it's very painful, and the treatment is to stay off of it and non-weight bearing. And I thought they were going to put me back on crutches, and I was really scared. But when I talked to my doctor, he asked about my pain levels, and I was feeling fine. Like I said, I thought I was going to be cleared to run. I was fine. And he said, well, absent pain, there could be something else going on there, but to be conservative and to make sure that you heal 100%, we're going to keep you off of high impact activity for another 3 months. I had already been off for 3 months healing the stress fracture. Now I was off for another 3 months to allow the swelling in the bone to go down and to further heal. So during this time, I could walk, I could do pool jogging, I could do the spin bike. I just wasn't able to stand in the pedals on the spin bike, so I could stay seated. So, and I could do strength training, but I could not lift more than 30 pounds. So I was limited in the amount of weight, but I could do a lot. Didn't have to sit on my butt anymore because of the crutches. So at least I could move. And I was actually encouraged by my physical therapist to do a lot of walking. So I really increased my walking during that time frame, and strength training, and of course I was doing all my physical therapy. So, I was definitely improving and getting stronger during that time. I wasn't just waiting. Um, but That was definitely another setback. So, not only did I have the first setback of the stress fracture, but then I had the second setback when I was very excited and thinking that I was healed and had to heal a bit longer. So, and the doctor did warn me when I first was diagnosed and I was not in the ER, but at the orthopedics office. He warned me it could be, 6 months to 12 months before I was back to running based on this particular injury. And I just, I couldn't believe that the healing time was going to be potentially a year. When you're looking at it from day one, thinking 1 year out before you could even start to get back to running and doing what I love to do, it was quite defeating at that moment. And, I was pretty upset. It's a very emotional process. And so, thankfully, it did not take the full year, but it did take 9 months. And, I was not expecting 9 months on that day one when I walked into that office. But that just goes to show that when you have an injury, it takes day by day patience. It's not something you can just hear and think, oh, okay, it'll be, a week and I'll be back. Or, okay, it's 6 months. And so you're depressed for 6 months. That's not going to help you. And, that's why I titled this podcast as I did, because I never lost faith that I would be back doing what I love to do and sharing my story with the world too, with you right here in this podcast. I didn't know about this podcast at the time, but I knew I wanted to share my story. And having these setbacks has made me a stronger person both mentally and physically. And honestly, I feel like it's made me a better coach for my athletes because I can recognize these potential injuries, and it certainly makes me more sensitive to that with my athletes, especially my athletes who are like me, over 40, running recreationally, but pushing their limits, pushing their own limits. And when every time you hear me talk about injury prevention or holding back or listening to your body, there is a true reason for that because I want my athletes and anybody who listens to my podcast or my my Instagram videos or anything. I want them to recognize that injury is possible and to do what they can to strengthen their bodies against that potential. It's always going to be a potential. So during this process, I had a DEXA scan because I checked a lot of things. I checked my nutrition levels, I checked calcium, and then I had this DEXA scan. Even though I'm not 50 yet, they don't usually do a DEXA scan until you're 50. I insisted. I said, "Well, I have a stress fracture, so that means that I should know whether there's some, bigger underlying issue that we should know about so I can manage that." And so they agreed to give me a DEXA scan, and it came back fine. I mean, I'm well within and well under actually the ranges for a under 50 DEXA scan. And it's so cute because I was talking to the woman who was the technician doing the scan, and she was asking me about my injury and all that, and my training. She's a runner also, and I was explaining to her, my I don't know what caused this. My training was going well and it was not high mileage. It was not out of my norm. It wasn't like I all of a sudden went and ran 14 miles when I'd only run 4, ever. So anyway, she she was doing the scan and she goes, "Well, you know what? Sometimes it's just dumb luck." That was the best answer I've ever gotten. You know what? Maybe it was just dumb luck. So, anyway, in the words of my DEXA scan technician. um, it was a very emotional time though during this, and ultimately though I stayed positive, And that's what I want to share with you. So if you are going through some type of injury, um, you need to really protect your mind. Um, protect your mind because that is the number one key to coming back from a setback like this. If you go down the woe is me spiral, it's just that. It's a spiral. It just keeps going down, 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 down. And it's hard to come out of if you allow that to happen. I understand that you're frustrated and I understand that it's hard and that especially not knowing, there's a time when you're injured that you just don't know. You don't know what you're going to, how quickly it will heal. You don't know if it'll heal. You want to be positive and believe it will, but, you don't know. I mean, maybe when I had that edema, maybe there was an avascular necrosis happening and I was going to have a replacement. You don't always know what's going on inside the body. Everyone's body is different. So there was that potential, I suppose. But you have to stay positive and you have to take it one day at a time and not to go down the spiral. Also, give yourself grace as you're healing. Being on crutches sucks, and it takes a lot of time to do everything. I mean, brushing my teeth, everything takes forever. Thankfully, I did not have to get up and get dressed and like go to work every single day because I would have had to get up at like 4 in the morning just to get normal stuff done to do that. Um, it's just everything takes forever. So give yourself grace, know that. And if you don't get your seated workout in, I had this whole seated workout that I had put together for myself because I wanted to stay active. And so I have this fantastic band workout that works upper body and core. So I had to stay seated. That was the only kind of workout that I could do. And I did the workout a couple of times, but quite honestly, it was really boring. It was so boring, and I mentally had trouble, getting myself to do this workout. So I would just do what I could, and, some days I wouldn't do anything. Other days I would just do the core part. Other days I might do some arm exercises, but I wouldn't really do a full workout like I would when I'm not on crutches. And that's because my normal activities just took up so much time in my day. There really wasn't a lot of time and energy to work out. So I did what I could when I had the energy. And otherwise, I just allowed my body to have the energy focused on healing. And when you are that injured, that's important. You need to allow your body the time and the resources to heal itself. But once you are cleared and they start you in your physical therapy, do your physical therapy. I hear so many people who say, "Oh, I've got this pain, I've got this, I've got that, and I went to physical therapy and they gave me all these exercises and I never do them." Well, how are you supposed to heal and get stronger if you don't do the work? Do your physical therapy. Okay. I got my point across, I hope. Control what you can and just let go of the rest. Tony Horton, my hero, he says, "Do your best and forget the rest." And I think that applies perfectly here in this particular situation. Um, just don't give up and definitely protect your mindset. Um, there are so many naysayers out there, especially when you get injured as a runner. It's rather frustrating, but that's why you have to protect your mind. Um, Everyone's got something to say. Ignore it. I remember being at an event. Now, this one didn't bother me so much. I thought it was kind of funny, but I was at an event. I was no longer on crutches. But the woman I was speaking with, she was inquiring about my injury and my healing, how I was feeling, how I was doing. And so I shared with her, yeah, I'm doing well. I'm feeling good, getting stronger. Thanks for asking. Just looking forward to, getting back out there. And she looked at me like in shock and she goes, "You're going to run again?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course I'm going to run again. Why do you think I'm going through all of this? Why do you think I'm doing physical therapy and all of these exercises? And, I want to get strong. I want to run again. Of course I'm going to run again." It's like, who are you? So there will be people who do not understand your love of running, who do not understand your love of the sport. And you probably run into them now. But when you are injured and coming back, um, there will be a lot of naysayers out there. "Oh, you shouldn't do that. Oh, you did too much, impact before, you're going to get injured again." There's all sorts of things. Protect your mind from these people. And, sadly, the people that say these things may even be the ones who love you the most. Remember that they say these things because they care about you. And just keep that in mind. They don't want you to be injured. They've seen you go through this difficult time, and they want the best for you. They don't realize how important running is to your lifestyle and to who you are and how you work in the world. They don't, as much as they love you, they can't see inside your mind. So you try to help them understand, I suppose, but truly protect your mind. Don't argue with people like that. It's just not worth your time and energy. Just, talk about it with someone else and protect your mind from that negativity and the naysayers. Um, it's also important that, while you're going through this emotional time, that you are also continuing to take care of your nutrition. Your body needs the nutrition to heal. This is not the time to fall into emotional eating of a bunch of junk. It is not easy to maintain a plant-based lifestyle when you are on crutches. However, it is definitely possible. And it is absolutely possible to continue to eat fresh foods, and not have to succumb to processed, foods all the time. You may find yourself incorporating a little more, but really pay attention to the ingredients in those foods. There are some good canned or boxed soups, for example, that are still pretty good ingredients and not too bad. You're going to increase the salt in those most likely, so increase your fluids. Um, so there are some things that you can incorporate as some convenience foods, but really make sure that you're trying to get in those whole fresh foods on your plant-based diet. Just maybe find things that are a little simpler to prepare. Tofu is really good during that time because it's pretty easy to prepare, and you can just maybe toss that and veggies all together in a pan and fry them up real quick, in a stir fry over maybe a microwaved rice, brown rice or something. I had that a lot because it was so easy to make. So you find the simple, easy to prep meals, but make sure that you just don't let your nutrition go. I was careful about my macros and making sure that I didn't overeat, because when you're sitting on your butt on crutches, it's very easy to overeat. Um, I love the dry roasted edamame, and I liked them before, but now they're like a staple in my diet because I got addicted to them in some ways while I was on crutches. But those suckers, they've got some calories in them too. So you got to watch out. You got to limit yourself to like a small bowl. But because I didn't want to go back and forth to the kitchen from my office, where I was mostly in the office, um, I just would bring the whole little container, like the whole box that they come in, into the office, and I just leave them there. And then I'd open the box and snack on them every once in a while. Oh, that's so dangerous because you just all of a sudden you look over and you're like, "Oh my god, half the box is gone." So, careful about these snacks. Snacks can get away from you. Um, but, simple meals, track your macros, stay on track. Even though you're not exercising, and, burning off energy and quote unquote calories, right? Then, I don't want to create a paranoia in your mind about weight or anything, but You don't need the same level of calories, but you still need calories. Your body still needs to heal, and it needs calories to do that. But you just wanna put it in balance with your activity level. So, less activity, but you still need calories, you still need the nutrients. So, anyway, keep with that. The recovery process for this stress fracture has been, um, slow. Let's put it that way, it's slow. But it hasn't felt slow because I've been able to do more and more. And when you've been on crutches for 9 weeks, and then all of a sudden you can walk on your own and do things, everything feels good. So it's a way to build in gratefulness and into your life and into your exercise routine. So I started with slow walking. I used my treadmill and I just did very slow walks on the treadmill. And I did that for quite a while, several weeks. So the first 3 months when I was waiting for that follow up MRI again, um, it was just walking. And as I felt better, I would increase the pace a little. So it was slow though. Um, I also progressed my physical therapy exercises every month. So those got progressively harder and harder as I got stronger. I added in pool jogging and spin bike that I mentioned earlier, but just staying in the saddle. My goal there was to make sure that my cardio was strong once I was eventually cleared to run, because I didn't want to have to fight my cardio system and my muscular system when I started running. And actually, that strategy has paid off for me. So, if you are in that process, work on your cardio when you can, right away. Start working on that so it's strong. Um, Once I was cleared for high impact activity, which didn't happen until March, I tried on my treadmill during walks. I would do 30-second intervals of easy running, very easy. And I would just do maybe half a dozen of 30-second intervals just to see how I felt, make sure I felt good, make sure I didn't have any pain or stiffness. And I did that for over a week. I didn't do it every day. So I never run on consecutive days. So I would do walks every day, but I would only try the running maybe 3 times a week and just see how I felt. And I felt good. So by that point, then I felt comfortable starting my run walk return to run plan, which progressively adds longer and longer run times along with walk intervals. So that's where I am right now. I just finished week 3 of a 6-week return to run program. And I am currently, so yesterday was the end of my 3rd week, and it was my longest run so far. And I did 10 intervals of 2 minutes running and 30-second walks. And then I sandwiched that between a 10-minute walk to warm up and then a 10-minute walk to cool down. So that was my workout for week 3. And I'm still doing my strength training. Um, and I'm still working on my comeback. My comeback is nowhere done yet. I am still in the comeback process. I have come a long way, and I'm very excited about that. But I've still got the underlying original injury that I believe caused or led up to the stress fracture. I have proximal hamstring tendinopathy, and it started off in my right leg, which is where the stress fracture was. And since having to sit for so long, I've started to develop it a bit in my left as well now. Um, but I do have a strategy and a plan. I have my physical therapy or physical therapist helping me and working on it. And this particular injury, though, did not show up until my last MRI, where I was cleared for the stress fracture, said there was no more stress fracture. The edema in the femoral head had gone away completely. This is the MRI that I had in March of 2024. So that's 9 months after my original injury. Um, And so anyway, I am healed from those things, but then it found tendinopathy in the hamstring at the high part, the attachment. So I suspected that for a very long time, just um, based on my feeling symptoms, and but nobody had said that that's what it was. They've always said, "Oh, we think it's your low back." Well, as I've learned more about that particular injury, that's not too uncommon to be misdiagnosed and to have to point to other areas of the body causing those pains. So I'm not surprised by that, but I feel kind of validated that they did finally find an actual medical finding on an imaging to show that it is proximal hamstring tendinopathy. So now I can get the right care that I truly needed way back in the beginning before the stress fracture even developed. So I am grateful for that. And I am working toward that and following the physical therapy and strengthening exercises that I need to truly finally get rid of that so that I do not have a risk of another fracture or another injury. Um, if you have sustained a similar injury, though, take these tips into account and help yourself heal fully, whether it's a stress fracture, proximal hamstring tendinopathy, or something else. It's all the same, really. It's not really dependent on where in the body it is. Mine ended up being in the femoral neck, which is an odd rarity, apparently. Yay me, right? But it could be anything. And I think the process, though, is the same: protecting your mind, nutrition, healing, do your physical therapy, all of that. But there will be more races. I had to give up I had to give up a couple of races because I had planned out my year. So unfortunately, I gave up a number of races, but specifically, I had to give up the half marathon, OC half marathon, um, which just occurred in May. Was not able to do that one because of my setback, my second setback. And I will not be running the Long Beach Marathon that is going to take place in October, which was my original marathon I was training for. And I was able to defer it to 2024, but there's no way I'm running a marathon in October when it's now May and I'm just now starting back. That would be number one, irresponsible. And number two, it just doesn't sound fun. So I'm not in no shape to be running a marathon right now. So two big races that were on my schedule had to get knocked off. But you know what? There's going to be other races. And I'm looking really forward to doing those and to training for them. But I want to train for them when I'm strong. I don't want to just go out and do it just to get it done. I want to enjoy the process. And, if you want to enjoy the process, keep that in mind. Don't just run a race just to run it. Enjoy it, live it, enjoy the journey toward that end goal. Um, a femoral neck stress fracture is a serious injury, and it can take a long time to recover from it. So stay positive, protect your mind. And if you are experiencing something like this, or if you have a similar story or just a story to share, it's really hard to find information from other people who have experienced this injury, especially other 40 plus women who have experienced an injury of this nature, because it is so rare. So if you have this story or if you're going through this right now, I encourage you to reach out to me. I want to be your support for this process. And if there is anything that I can share about what I've gone through and how I did things that would help someone else going through something like this, I want to share that because I had to figure it all out myself. And it wasn't always easy. But I learned a lot of good tips along the way, especially when it comes to living on crutches. I have a laundry list of tips I could share on that. So I want to support you. And if you are going through this, I truly encourage you to please reach out to me. I want to be your support. I want to hear your story. How did you come about experiencing this yourself? I'm very curious about it now that I've experienced it and gone through it. So so that is my stress fracture story, and I really wanted to share this. I don't know what the feedback will be on this, but I felt compelled to share my story. If it can help someone else, then that's okay. If I get grief for it, that's okay too, because I think that I'm going to help more people than will give me grief, and I can handle the grief. I've gone through a stress fracture. I can handle it. So, anyway, if there's anything that I can do to support you, please reach out. Let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off for today and look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. And in the meantime, run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach Val. I will see you next time. Bye bye.